In Iran, that it's very rich, both in culture and the natural resources, the people have been suffering far too long. First, the regime of Shah ruled Iran autocratically, arrested, tortured, killed people with the support of the United States and Great Britain. The hope for a better future for the people was crushed when the Shah's dictatorship was replaced by theocratic dictatorship. So the generations of resistance have been crushed by violence. 3 years ago, Iranians rose up, inspired by brave women, after the police killed 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. And 3 years ago, here in the West, everybody was watching what is happening in Iran. But since then, unfortunately, the attention is not so big anymore. Although this year, too, there has been big protests in Iran, too. The regime, I think it's hated. You can tell me more soon. It's hated and it's been opposed both inside and outside Iran by the Iranian people. So I'm honored to have two guests who work for Free Iran, Azalrezapour Mahin and Elahe Mossadegh. Could you introduce yourself and why are you focusing on being the voice of Iranians inside Iran while you are yourself living abroad and have been away from so many years?
Thank you so much. Well, as you said, my name is Elahe, and I'm 25 years old. I'm a student in Sweden. I was born in Iran, but I've grown up in Sweden. And my father was a political prisoner for about 5 years during the 80s. And, well, the reason why I focus on making the voices of the people of Iran heard is because I believe that it is our responsibility when people my age, people our age, are on the streets and sacrificing their lives for freedom. The least we can do is to use the privilege and democracy that we have here to echo their voices and expose the crimes of the regime as much as we can.
Yeah, so my name is Asal. I'm 22 years old. I'm also a student. I was also born in Iran, and both of my parents were also political prisoners. And in 1984, my uncle was executed by the regime. And ever since, I have, for the past years, I've made the decision to be an advocate for human rights in Iran. And just as Ella has said, to be the voice of the young people that are protesting on the streets of Iran.
I heard that the executions, they are rising. Why is the regime doing these measures?
So that is correct. The executions are rising as of right now. So September 2025, we have surpassed over 900 executions. Last year, there have been over 1,000 executions. And the rising toll of executions is a sign that the regime is very weak at this moment. It's not a sign of strength. The regime is terrified of its own people, of another uprising, just as the Iran protests that happened over the past years, because they know that they're at the brink of collapse. So to avoid their inevitable collapse, they're executing their people. And just recently, the UN spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Commissioner stated that the regime is using executions or the death penalty as a tool of state intimidation. And it's because it's the only tool that's left for them to avoid their inevitable downfall.
Yeah, I think also what we have to remember here is that the regime is doing these executions at a great cost as well, because obviously it is further ruining its image in an international community. But their fear of the people is so much greater that they know that if they stop, that people will rise. So they take these measures to intimidate and scare people as much as possible.
Just as it happened during the 80s. So in 1988, there was a big massacre of 30,000 political prisoners because the regime knew that the people will rise again. And because of that fear, they ended up executing 30,000 political prisoners in the span of 2 to 3 months. And as of right now, we're watching history repeating itself with the rising executions.
Personally, of course, I'm not Iranian. I don't support any particular group or political party in Iran, but everybody who wants to fight for democracy and free Iran. So it's up to Iranian people who should to select their leaders in free elections. But I personally, I was a political sponsor for Mehdi Hassanin and Behrouz Ehsanin, 2 political prisoners who were sentenced to death because of supporting the PMOI. And despite all the efforts, they were executed in July this summer. What do we know about the fate of the other political prisoners?
Yeah, so the case of Behrouz Ehsanin and Mehdi Hassanin is just a prime example of the brutality that we're facing with the regime. They were condemned and the regime tried to carry out the execution in January of 2025. It was also during the time that you became active in their case, and we were able to prolong their lives until July, and the regime waited until the last weeks of the beginning of the summer break to execute them. And despite international pressure, resolutions that also happened here in the parliament with their names calling to hold their execution, they were still executed. And their case is just, it showcases the brutal reality that we're facing and who we're fighting against.
Yeah, and about the fate of other prisoners, currently there are 14 supporters of the PMOI, People's Mujahideen of Iran, who are also facing execution, and 5 of them are facing imminent execution. And well, as I was saying, they risk the same fate as Behrouz Ehsanin and Mehdi Hassanin. And whilst the regime never discloses official numbers of how many political prisoners there are or how many prisoners, we know that there is a much greater number that is unknown. What we know from the sources of the NCRI that are inside Iran is that there are at least 3,600 supporters and members of the PMOI that have disappeared, and we don't know about their whereabouts because their families are also under great pressure to not say anything. What we also know is that the regime has started a forceful transfer of political prisoners to prisoners with harsher conditions or that are farther away from their hometowns so that their families won't be able to visit them as much, and this isolates them further. The regime also does the so-called white torture, which is, for instance, denying medical attention or not separating political prisoners from dangerous criminals, and in fact even enticing other prisoners to harass, hurt, or kill the political prisoners. Yeah, that is what we know about their fate so far.
It's a bit frustrating, like from here, what we can do, what none of us can do, because the situation is happening inside Iran. We do what we can. We signed a declaration together with a lot of MEPs over the party borders in solidarity with No to Execution. Where political prisoners, they went on hunger strike every Tuesday. Is this still going on? What impact does this have?
Yes, so the campaign Tuesdays Against Executions, it's still ongoing. So it has entered its 84th week, so this week. And so the significance of Tuesdays in Iran is that usually most executions are carried out Tuesday mornings. And to protest against this violent act of the regime, a group of political prisoners started this campaign where they would go on hunger strikes every Tuesday to protest against the executions. And so far, this campaign has spread across 50 different prisons in various cities of Iran. It is still ongoing. And one important note that I also wanted to share is that Behrouz Ehsanin and Mehdi Hassanin, they were also participants in this campaign, even though they were the ones that were facing the death penalty and they ended up being executed. They were also fighting against the executions of all prisoners. And the significance of the campaign that has spread across. I mean, it has surpassed prison walls. Family members inside of Iran are participating in the protests, so they go and protest in front of the prisons, which we've never seen it before. And it has also gathered quite international support, as you just said that in this parliament as well. There was a declaration signed by many various MEPs. And I think the most important message that this campaign is spreading is that there is a resistance in Iran, and it's an organized resistance, and that gives people hope.
I just want to add that this campaign, it started in Ghazal Hasar prison, which is the prison where executions mostly occur. And it also, the female wards or the female parts of the prison were also in this campaign from the beginning. And I just want to stress that, the regime is using the executions to break the spirits of these prisoners. And in response to that, they are doing this campaign. They are showing that there is a union between the political prisoners, that there is that they are still resisting. And this also shows the importance of this organized resistance, because the fact that it has been able to spread to 50 different prisons, it shows the greatness of it, and it shows the importance.
Yeah. There's also, to just explain the scale of this campaign, there's a woman called Elisabetta Zamparuti, who is the founder of Hands of Cain and also a member of the European Committee against torture, who has also started to go on a hunger strike every Tuesday in solidarity with this campaign and with the political prisoners in Iran. Yeah.
Who are the ones that the regime is mainly targeting? Like many of the political prisoners, they were members of the organized resistance units of the Iranian opposition, but is it like wider? Who are they? Who are their main enemies?
So basically the main people that the regime is targeting, they are the members and supporters of the PMOI, of the resistance, and they are targeting them through arrests, forceful disappearances, and by putting pressure on them and their families. And even the regime is even targeting symbols of resistance, which we have seen recently is that they have bulldozed the burial site of the victims of the 1988 massacre to make it into a parking lot, because even the memory of these people is dangerous for the regime, because the fact that people go there to pay their respects to, in honor of the victims, that is a threat to the regime. So they are targeting all anything to do with the PMOI and the resistance. And as you mentioned, the resistance units are a big group that is targeted by the regime. The resistant units are people that are undercover, dedicating their life to the struggle for freedom. Aside from pursuing their own lives, their jobs, and being a part of the society, they are also actively performing operations such as writing slogans on the walls or sabotaging the regime's sites. And they also organize protests, such as protests for retirees, teachers, nurses. Also, when there are big protests, like we saw in 2022, they are at the front lines. And all of these operations and missions, obviously, they are basically suicide missions, because they know that as soon as they get caught, or if they get caught, that they will be put through brutal torture and face execution. But despite this is a growing group of people across Iran, and especially among the youth and the women that are leading this movement. And one of their main responsibilities is to keep the spirit of resistance alive and to keep the hope alive, so that people know that there is a fight still going on and there are people that are fighting this.
You mentioned before that there are like, did you say 15 or 50 cities where
50
they had
cities,
50
yeah.
cities? Yeah.
50 prisons.
So it's all around Iran, or is it like regionally differences, or people are standing up everywhere, or how does it go?
It's across all of Iran, all the different cities. There are 50 prisons in total that are right now participating.
Yeah, and it has also reached the women's wards.
Yeah.
So the female political prisoners were also one of the first to join the movement and the campaign. And yeah, it just shows that they're all connected, and there is an organized resistance happening in Iran, despite what the regime tries to convince others that there is no hope, there is no resistance. But we can see that there is, and there is hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some researches that more than 80% of Iranian people are opposing the regime. What do you think? What is the real? Do you have you are living here, but it's going worse for them. It seems more they do this horrible stuff, they are getting more enemies.
Yeah. So 2 years ago there were so-called elections in Iran, which we don't call elections. They were more a selection of the people that they chose. But the official numbers that actually the regime gave out was that 91% of the people boycotted the election. And from the remaining percentage of people who voted, there were many blank votes or forced votings. So this just showcased that the regime does not have any support inside of Iran. And this goes back to why the regime is executing so many people. It's because they don't have anything left. They're scared of the people. Since the uprising of 2022, the regime has realized that it's slowly falling down, and they're trying to prevent their collapse.
Yeah, exactly. As Al mentioned, the elections, the so-called elections that the regime organizes, they are an example of the lack of support that they have from people inside Iran. And also the 2022 uprisings, if it showed us anything, that after all these years, that the young generation is also aiming to overthrow this regime. And despite the crackdown and despite all the despite how the regime despite the regime's response to that, we know that this is a people that won't make peace with this regime again, because the regime has shown its true face to this new generation as well, the same way that it did back in the 80s. And we can also see that inside Iran, it's not obviously free for people to show what they want, except to show that they, when they are courageous enough to show that they are against the regime. But we can also see outside of Iran the amount of protests that there are for a democratic Iran and for a democratic republic. All of that, I would say, shows that the regime's time is up.
Yeah. Mm. Well, here we have made declarations. As I said, in July we had June we had an event here by the Friends of Free Iran, and there the support for Iranian opposition was very wide. Like from left to right, everybody wants to support the Iranian people. But then, what to do? What should we as an MEPs, what the Western governments, the whole community, not just Western, but the world community. We know that Iran has enemies everywhere also, but personally I think that bombing Iran is something terrible. I heard that some people were supporting it when Israel had their... that's not an answer. But what is an answer? What should we do?
So I think that our most important tool is that to use our voice, not only to support the people of Iran, but also stand against the regime. And it is important, or the key element in this struggle for freedom is that the international community must recognize the Iranian people's right to resist against the tyranny or the dictatorship that they're living under. As you said, we always say that a war is not the solution. Appeasing the regime is also not a solution. And the only viable solution is the third option, and that's to recognize the people's rights to resist and their fight for freedom and their organized resistance, because that's the only reason why the regime has stayed so long and has survived this long.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that there is no effective dialogue with this regime, because it will only use that to buy time to continue its hostage taking and continue its pursuit for a nuclear bomb. I think the main thing is to stop all the trying to make this regime better, trying to make them, stop all of that and stand with what the people of Iran actually want.
Yeah, I think it's not just our role. Everyone has a role in this struggle, and we have to encourage people to break ties with this regime, because despite what people think, is that the reality of this regime is that they're killing people, and they don't see a difference between who they're killing, and they will continue as long as they are in power. And so just I think quite recently the Australian government just expelled the Iranian ambassador, and they closed down the embassy in Australia, and they also said that they would blacklist IGC. So it's also a matter of international security to stop this relationship with this terrorist regime, because it's a question of when it will fall down. So better sooner than later.
What do you think about this? What should the international community and the European Parliament be doing?
Well, I think it's very important that it's not politicized in a wrong way. As I said, that it's very it was so great to have almost everybody in, to support the Iranian resistance. I don't know, in Europe there was a time not so long ago when we had this idea, I was not here, but there was an idea in Europe that we can make it better. Like we cannot overthrow it, so we must make it better. But I think it looks for me that nobody's believing it anymore. So it's something that it's. But sometimes we are a bit like we don't know what to do. That's why I think it's important to talk with Iranian people, because the change it must come inside. But of course. It's easy for me to say that it must come inside, because of course we have to do what we can, and that's what you have been saying all the time, that we need to stop dreaming of the regime is making itself better. I think that's the first step, but I think that the future steps we still need to wait. I think I actually would like to ask you that. If we talk about sanctions, it's often said that if you have sanctions, then it's just like the normal people who are suffering, or like I think it's clear that bombing Iran is wrong. And then, but some people say that then the people will see that that now it's their chance to. But do you think that there are some, like, what do you think about the sanctions, or are there some like kind of strong measures we should think about, like stronger we are already doing? We know that there are already a lot of sanctions.
Yeah, so we welcome this. I mean, if we talk about the current situation, the snapback mechanism will be put back in place. And we welcome the decision by the UN to do this, because the way to support the Iranian people is to stand against the regime. And the regime is surviving off of money and terrorism. It's not surviving out of support. They don't have any support in the country. That's why they're going back to these measures, because it's their only measures that they have. So weakening the regime is the best way to support the Iranian people and their struggle for freedom. And as you just said, that it is the responsibility of the Iranian people to pursue their freedom. But the decisive role that the international community has in this is to support the Iranian people. And as simple as it sounds, it's just that you have to stop having this kind of relationship with the regime. I mean, an increase in the economy will mean that the regime is continuing its terrorism abroad, which also affects the European people.
Yeah, because the reality is that the people of Iran, whether there are sanctions or not, won't have a better life as long as this regime is still there, because they will use all the profit from anything just for their own cause, to keep warmongering and continuing their terrorism.
Yeah, just to give you an example, over the past months, there haven't been any UN sanctions on Iran. But the regime has been cutting the electricity in cities. So for days and days, people of Iran, they don't have any electricity or access to water. What does the sanctions weren't put in place when the regime started executing people? So there is no connection between that. That's the narrative that the regime tries to put into the international community minds, is that sanctions are the reason why our people are living in misery. But that's not the case.
And it's technical issues. We talk about uranium. People are watching the news. Are they really having an atomic bomb or not? Whatever. But I think that the human rights should be the issue. That if you are so terribly breaking human rights every day, it should be the biggest reason to make big sanctions. Do you have something more you would like to say to me or people who are listening? Or
I think we would like to ask if you have any message for the Iranian people, because they always appreciate it when their voices are heard, especially by politicians. And I think it would mean a lot if you send them a message.
Yes, well, it's so hard to speak from this position to people who are really struggling for their life and for their country. I think it's very important that everybody in Iran knows that here people are wholeheartedly, and not just in this parliament, but wider in Europe, are supporting the resistance, but also just the everyday lives that we would want to make it better, and we want to do what we can do to help. Even though it's very hopeless, seems to be very hopeless many times, the Iranian people are very valuable, and I think in the end you will prevail. I'm sure. This is something I really want to believe. It's been taking so many decades already, but now I think we can see the light. There is really a hope for the kind of heroic resistance of Iranian women we all saw in TV some years ago. It's important to know, everybody to know that it's still continuing, and we really appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we also appreciate your help. I mean, you've been so active and actively involved in the cases that we present you, and you've been a great listener. And I just want to say that, everyone has a role in the struggle, and you have been a great advocate for that.
Yeah, I think what is important for me as an Iranian, as an advocate in this, it's that to just see the sacrifice that people are making inside Iran, inside prisons, and to see that there is so much more that we can do outside here. There's so much more that parliamentarians can do and governments can do, and
it's our shared responsibility.
Yeah.